in a moment, as soon as we have established the link with the web stream. So, your attention. Okay. So welcome to this press conference to all the media from Europe in the room and from Europe on the webcast. I have the pleasure to introduce our four guests. Pedro Duque, Minister, Host Minister. Then we will have Manuel Aitor and Frédéric Vidal, the co-chair of the Space 19 Plus Ministerial meeting. And then we will have also a presentation from our Director General. So to start this press conference, I would like to recall everyone that this session is web streamed, so I would like to have as less movement as possible. And we will have a short introduction by our four guests, followed by question and answer from the people who are in the room. No Q&A, which will be transmitted from the web stream. And then we will have the possibility to have a little ceremony with the chairs to prepare for the next meeting. So without any ado, please, Pedro Duque, Minister Duque, you have the floor.
So, thank you. I'll start with a small statement about Spain in Spanish so that everybody can take it. Como saben,
as you know, these last couple of days we have been holding the ministerial level council meeting of ESA, where we subscribe to investments in the years going forward. We are, I have to say, very happy with the success we've achieved. It's the result of work done by Spain in the last 3 years, because we've led the ministerial council process as trying to achieve the level of consensus and agreement needed, and that have resulted in today's achievements. In this past year, up till today, Seville has been the space capital of Europe. That's been Seville here in Spain, up to and including today. We have been leading the space developments in Europe. We're very proud of the success achieved today. Switching back to English.
We are in Sevilla for this conference, for the current presidency and the Director General of ESA. And that's all. We pass on the baton now to other countries who will lead a probably even more successful future for ESA. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Duque. I would like to invite the first co-chair of this meeting, Madame Vidal.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Let me start by expressing my gratitude to Pedro Duque and Spain for their hospitality here. Thanks to them, we have had an extremely promising and rich ministerial. It's been very well prepared, and I have to commend Jan Verder, the ESA Director General, and all the people from ESA and all the delegations here that have enabled us to lay the groundwork for this conference. It's a great honor for me to co-chair it here with my colleague Manuel Aitor. Thanks to this conference, with the attendance of the 22 ESA member states and the EU and the associated states and the observers, we have been able to reaffirm our common ambition for Europe. And I think the size of this room gives you an idea of how wide and broad and deep the representation at this conference was. It's also something that bears witness to European unity in space, with something like 14 billion euros that together we have decided to invest, and that is the reality in budget terms of our ambition. We should never forget that Space Europe has been a success story. 250 Ariane launchers and Galileo, billion users So you shouldn't say that you use your GPS to find out where you are. It's Galileo from now on. That will be the byword for geolocation, as GPS has been. We've been able, therefore, to lay the foundations of our success going forward. Over these 2 days, we have looked at space projects that affect over 500 million of our fellow citizens. And all of these programs and projects are there to serve European citizens. So apart from the purely space-related aspects, I have to say that with this conference, we've been able to see how strong European unity has been around this table and how much that unity is the backbone of Europe's strength. We have made Europe a leader in space together, and together we will be able to maintain that position and enhance it still forward when we're talking about space. The projects funded are more than just about individuals and even countries. We're talking here about the drivers of our unity, without which we would not be in a position to achieve the kind of success we have. So this conference today enables us to send out to the whole world a message of European unity and Europe's determination to continue to be a key actor on the international stage. I've talked about our ambitions that we discussed during these 2 days at ministerial level. I would sum them up in 4 items. The first ambition that we've talked about is independent sovereign access to space. It's been of great importance because without access to space, there can be no space program. And thanks to our European space programs, we have and continue to have 2 independent, sovereign, I would say, European launches, very important. We have all been reminded of this, and we have together reaffirmed our determination to keep this. And indeed, recently in Germany, there was legislation expressing a preference for the European launcher. So it's clearly a big success to have consolidated complementarity of our 2 launches, Ariane and Vega, so as to cover all our needs and also lay the grounds for the future by developing the necessary technology for future launches, because you know that the lead times when we talk about science and technology in space are always very long. And therefore, it was vital for us to have laid that foundation stone for future launches. As Minister for Research, I, of course, have a great interest in science programs, and we should never forget to what extent space is an infinite field for developing our knowledge, whether we're talking about the radiation in the universe or confirming the existence of gravitational waves or the effect of high energy levels in the universe. So the third aspect that we all agree on is that the best place to see the Earth from is space, because space shows how beautiful our planet is, but it also reveals how fragile it is, and therefore it was very important for these Earth observation programs be carried forward to enable us to better supervise and care for the Earth, essentially through the joint program with the EU, Copernicus, which is the best program for environmental data and monitoring, so that we can see what's happening with climate change and hopefully to prevent it and combat it. And then there is the space of our dreams, exploration, and there too, together we have taken on some very ambitious commitments, joining in with the Mars Sample Return mission, along with NASA, that will give us a better understanding of the planet. And also by working on the Lunar Gateway, which will be sort of halfway house between the Earth and the Moon, and then following on from the agreements that we have signed with our German partners, that was this year in October in Toulouse. Together we'll be launching a European robotic mission with a strong European presence because it's vital for us to be continually involved in space exploration. And then all the member states have once again reaffirmed their commitment to the ISS, so that will mean that Thomas Pesquet will very soon be able to get back into space, where Matthias Maurer will join him. And that again is a fine symbol of European cooperation and friendship. And in conclusion, let me very briefly try to remind you why space is so crucial and vital to Europe and its citizens. As I said, ESA member states total something like 500 million people, and those are the people we're working to with our space ambitions. Obviously, there's this aspect of dreaming and conquest of space that leaves us starry-eyed, but also very ambitious. It's very important to give young people these ambitions. I've talked about science and research. It's all well and good, but one should never forget that space is part and parcel of our day-to-day life. Some of these space-related activities are very clear to us. Satellites that give us safe air traffic or civil security, the weather, monitoring the climate and climate change so as to preserve our planet, provides better connections, because without space there can be no mobile phones. But it shows us also how we can use all these data from space and come up with the new uses of this data, boosting our industries and economy. And I think that's what we must all be aware of. And I think we, in this conference, have all stated how we are aware of space as a driver of cohesion among the 500 million inhabitants of Europe, represented by their delegations in their day-to-day lives and also in the preparation of their future. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Je passe la parole.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give the floor now to the ESA Director General, Mr. Johan Werner.
And welcome all to this press conference. First of all, I would like to thank our host, Pedro Duque, and all his people. I would like to thank the co-chairs who made this conference possible by sharing this the 2 days. And of course, there are a lot of more to thank the people behind all of these programs, and then also the member states. Yes, you have a happy DG in front of you, and you have all the directors being here, and I look to their faces, and they are looking happy as well. So if you have questions to the different programs, they are more than happy to explain it in detail what was achieved. It looks always so simple after such 2 days of intensive discussions. There is a program, we have missions, everything looks trivial, but each and everyone who looks a little bit more into detail knows that these are really complicated procedures, and I'm therefore very happy. I mean, NASA has one government, we have 22. So this is already something which is different, and I'm very grateful for all the member states, plus Slovenia, plus Canada, for the support of what we are doing. It is more than 2 years of preparation. It's unbelievable. More than 2 years of preparation. There were some smart brains we used in this time, having new ideas, having also a new narrative, because it's not only to bring a project, to bring a program on the table, but there should be a narrative for a comprehensive program, and this is what we tried to provide. We discussed it with our member states, we discussed it with industry, with citizens, with taxpayers, with our people inside ESA, the experts here and there, and it was not always easy. It looks so easy, but sometimes we had discussions, should we do this, should we do that, and how to form all of this to come to a comprehensive program. There was just an idea at the beginning, but then there was also a narrative, and I believe especially citizens deserve that we have a narrative of what we are doing and not just saying them, throwing some acronyms to them what the names of our missions are. And therefore, I hope that the support of the member states here by money and by some more resolutions is also a support for this comprehensive balanced program. So therefore, what we did, for instance, we are looking to the society at large, meaning what can we do from space for the society? What can we do for the competition Minister Vidal was already mentioning? What can we really do for the European industry and also this, the academic area? And what about the environment? The environment which is changing, as we know, and the environment is endangered. Climate change is one point, but also in space, hazards in space. So we have hazards on the surface of the Earth, we have hazards in space, and we have to see. Now you want to see some more facts and not only blah blah from the Director General. I understand that, and I will offer it as well. So here it is. The overall subscription, 14.4 billion euros. 14.4. 14.4. I have to repeat it. Yeah, for you it's trivial, it's just a number with 3 digits. For me, it's, I tell it you, it's a surprise. It is even more than I proposed. So that means some of the programs were obviously so attractive that member states said, okay, we have to do more than what is just proposed. And this is good. This is a very good message. We have a significant increase of mandatory program. You know that mandatory program is science and also the basic activities. After a long period, we got this increase, and I'm very thankful because this is the backbone of ESA. Science and basic activities are the backbones of ESA. And all the pillars, and I come back to that in a minute, were supported. So there is not one pillar which is ignored. That means our narrative, which was developed something like 1.5 years ago or something like that, was really also attractive for the member states. And then there's also a part of development of ESA. So here are the pillars, you know all that, and I know Mr. Jatzombeck is always saying he knows it now also if he is waking up during the night because he heard it so often from me. Yes, I'm always using this because I'm a professor and part of didactics is to repeat. And therefore, the 4 pillars are the pillars of ESA: science and exploration, safety and security, applications consisting of Earth observation, navigation, telecommunication, enabling and support, which is consisting of technology developments, but also the space transportation. Now the next is, again, you will be very attentive, these are the numbers per program. Here are the numbers per program, 14.4 billion euros. Now, this picture looks a bit ugly for my point of view because there are too many words and numbers in it, but I will give you some of the information over that. This is all in million euros. And the values in brackets does not mean that there is any reservation with the numbers. These are the numbers beyond the 3 years which are in the optional programs necessary. For the mandatory program, we have to also provide 2 additional numbers, the fathers and mothers, I don't know how many mothers, how many fathers it was, of the convention had a very bright idea. They said, please provide always a plan for 3 years for optional and mandatory program, but then also provide for 2 more years the mandatory program in case there is no meeting, so that ESA does not die out after 3 years in case of any crisis. So it's really a smart solution 50 or 45 years ago. So you see here, so the different areas, these are the numbers, as I said, in million euros. Now I come to the member states. These, you cannot read it, but this is the difference between other member states, other agencies and ESA. We have so many partners, so that are very small numbers. But here you see the numbers per country, and you see also who is the strongest, who is the second, and so on. So we are very happy that we have each and every one of them. And that means sometimes we have big countries and big contributions, but we have also big countries, or let's say better, great countries. That means there's countries of a smaller size, but still their contribution to ESA is there. And therefore, I'm very happy that we have all of them on board. I will show you now again. You know this, but for me it's very important. As I said, science is the backbone of what we are doing in ESA. and we got the support, and we will go forward, especially also with a very, for me personally, inspiring mission. All missions are inspiring, I know it, Günther. But these Lisa and Athena to go to look to black holes and the emitted gravitational waves. Is it possible to say emitted? Okay, it is. I'm just a civil engineer, so I have always the colleagues to combine. In exploration, we are looking to the destinations. Low Earth orbit, the International Space Station was mentioned. Moon with the gateway and the surface of the moon, and Mars. The first ones with humans, the second one only with robots. Then the space safety program, safety and security, looking to different hazards in space. It was a new attempt, and it was for me not so sure. I was not so sure that responsibility is resonating directly also with money. But yes, we have it. We have it. We have the missions for space safety. That means we will go to look to space weather, we will deorbit space debris, and we will also look to work for the future of deflecting asteroids hitting toward the Earth. So we have it. We have the space safety pillar now introduced. Earth observation, this is normally, Josef, 1 hour or 2 hours explanation what we are doing in Earth observation. Here I do it very shortly. We got the support in Earth observation for our future EO, as well as for Copernicus and for many additional aspects, like, for instance, Arctic missions and others. So we got a big support over there. Navigation is in addition, it's a complementary program to the Galileo program, and also there we got some increase compared to the numbers last time. And which is a good message that we go ahead with new developments for satellite navigation. Telecommunication, again, I look to Magali. We could talk an hour or two. You could talk maybe 3 hours. I will not do it, but there are all these new things of quantum key distribution. There are things with laser communication. All of this is part of the telecommunication, or you say artist program, but I use telecommunication because then people will understand it more easily than the word of artist. And as I said earlier, we also have this research and development. In ESA slang, it's GSTP, meaning looking for new technologies. And last but not least, space transportation, covering the launchers, big and small ones, so Ariane 6, Vega C, but also small launchers, and also a reusable space shuttle, which was fully subscribed. Space Rider will not only fly, but will also land. So this is very important. So we have a fully fledged space transportation program. But as I said at the beginning, we were also discussing about future development of ESA, and I got the clear task that I should think about it and come back to the ministers with some ideas how to develop the future. For me, this ministerial has one very clear message. This is united space in Europe, because all the member states, plus EU, plus ESA, are working together for Europe, and not in contrast or in conflict with other countries, but to join forces for a better way in the future. And therefore, Space 19 Plus is about inspiration, competitiveness, and responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, very happy DG, and I'm pleased to invite Minister Ettore to have his statement as a co-chair of this meeting.
Thank you very much. I believe I will be very brief, because the most important is also to listen to the press. But I should start just with a sentence. It was very clear on the room that it has become a consensus that we have secured today a further step on increase European competitiveness on the global space arena. And this is important because in these discussions is not my first ministerial, but in these discussions it has been always an hidden elephant on around the room by comparing certainly with the United States and more with China, and we should agree that, as Frederick mentioned, and also Jan Warner, that we are clear that we did a great step for Europe and European citizens at large. And this step should be acknowledged it has been driven by those that work very hard over the last 2 years in the preparation of this ministerial. I should again remember Spain, the previous Spain presidency, Pedro Duque, and all his team, the Spanish delegation, and I should never forget that the symbolism of organizing this meeting in Seville 500 years ago, also from Seville, a true European tripulation of 5 boats left to the first circumnavigation with Magalhães heading and then returning back with Elcano, and 500 years after, we are here also to do a further and to prepare a further step on the European presence on global exploration. So we should definitely remember that, thanks to the Spanish presidency. Definitely to ESA Executive, to Jan Warner, Director General, but also to the ESA directors, the ESA Secretariat that have worked very hard here. But last but not least, all to the member states, the delegations. There was a lot of work in the last 2 years. This has involved hundreds of people in all the member states, and that should definitely be acknowledged. Also, it is for me and for Portugal a privilege to have worked with Frédéric Vidal and the French delegation to prepare and to start preparing the next 3 years and to work definitely for the coming years to guarantee ESA. And again, if this is a success, or if this ministerial was a success in our view in terms of the way and in terms of the consensus which were built, and certainly in raising the overall funding level made available to ESA, we should also note that in a symbolic way, we have also done a very strategic strengthening of ESA as an independent, autonomous, intergovernmental organization. And we know this is not the first time it happens. I will repeat it, ESA as an independent, autonomous, intergovernmental organization, because this is what has been made ESA different from other organizations. We know that in Europe we have other experience, like CERN, but this is and will become more and more important for our democracies to really understand how in Europe we are giving an example worldwide to bring together different governments, different societies, small and large countries, to build a real independent organization which is driven by knowledge, and this is a very difficult and complex endeavor. And here I should definitely acknowledge certainly all member states, but I must start by the large member states which have increased significantly their contribution, and they are in this room, certainly German and the head of the German delegation, Thomas Jonsson-Beck, is in the room. Certainly France, Frédéric, my co-chair, and Jean-Yves Legal, but also the Italian delegation, Riccardo Fraccaro. The British delegation I believe is not here, but myself, I was very much involved directly with the British minister, Chris Skimore, and he has been very instrumental in also increasing the overall British engagement in ESA. And certainly Spain, which has already become a very large contributor, Belgium, but also the small member states. And I don't speak only for Portugal. I believe if this ministerial was very important in guarantee large and the most, well-known programs in ESA, like space transportation, the confirmation of Kourou as a major spaceport, European spaceport for large and medium-size transporter. This ministerial was also very important to open two new frontiers for science, particularly those associated with space weather and the conditions that we have available, for instance, for the Arctic observation and Arctic weather, which was a program that we didn't know that could succeed before we started working yesterday. And it was a very interesting consensual agreement between small countries and large countries to make it happen due to the many discussions and, again, the engagement of ESA on these issues. So, certainly acknowledging the significant increase of the large member states, also small member states has made significant increases at their relative size. And this calls for a point that Frederic Vidal has already mentioned and also reported by our Director General, was the need more and more, the critical need to better communicate what does it mean, this 14.4 billion for common and for every single European citizen and for all the citizens in our member states. We need to improve this communication, we need to engage people in better understanding and to make sure that everyone do understand that space is in our everyday, anytime, anywhere, being used since we enter in a car or since we enter in a train or in a ship or for increase the land's productivity in our agro-business sectors. And therefore, that understanding will certainly is a must for all of us to better communicate what we do in any single program and any single activity. This leads to my final points. The consensus and happiness around the table should be used also for two main messages, and we all member states invite ESA Executive and ESA the Director General to take stock with all the member states about the process which has been decided over the coming months and in a continuous way. First, also in articulation with other European programs, particularly those which will be decided under the European Union and through the European Commission in the coming months, and this is a major task to take stock on these issues. Second, more and more, to take stock on the modernization of ESA's industrial policy, which has been part of one of the most important resolutions accepted and approved during this meeting, and this we need to take stock. And again, we have invited everyone for informal meeting in the coming 6 months so that we can take stock with all ministers in an informal way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Aitor. So I think we've concluded the statement from our guest, and now is the time for taking the questions from the media. So please make sure you state your name and your organization, and there are 2 mics which will be handed over to you. So yes, please.
Yes, please. Thank you. Josep Corbella from La Vanguardia from Barcelona. One very specific question is, please, Mr. Werner, of this 14.4 billion, can you specify how much is committed for the first 3 years and how much is committed for years 4 and 5? Then I would like to request whether that table that you have shown can be distributed. Thank you.
So I can say it roughly. I look to Tony, he can give the right numbers, but I think it's about 12 for 3 years and 14.4 for 5 years. That's right? So the last digit, I'm not so sure, behind the comma, but it's 12 for 3 years. 12 point, I say the digit I don't know after the 12. Yes. Tony, do you have the digit? 12.5?
12.5 at least.
Okay,
yes.
12.5. I look to Jean-Max.
Yes, it's 12.5, a little bit less, but we can say 12.5.
12.5 for 3 years. The other 2 years, as I said, these are just the mandatory program, CSG, basic activities and science. These 3 aspects are the beyond for the next 2 years. And you want to see the picture again, did I understand correctly? Everything can be printed, but I don't know when and how. Please, Philip.
So yes, the idea will be to publish a press release, and in press release you are going to receive the 3 resolution, and we can have copies here for you. It will be immediately released after this meeting, so you will have these. And keep in mind that the process between the moment we got all the subscription and the moment you have the final numbers has reached to this chart, and the detail can come a bit later. So,
and if you, I'm an engineer, if you look on this picture for basic activities, the values in the brackets, 585, science 1152, and CSG 203, if you add these 3 numbers and subtract them from 14.4, you have the right number for the 3 years. And it's 12.5.
thank you. Another question? Yes, please.
It's Josh Pisana from Politico Europe. My question is about the HERA project, which you, I guess, successfully secured commitments for. You didn't secure enough last time you met to fund a similar project. I wonder what changed this time on that scheme.
The situation was last time there was big support for, at that time it was called AIM. There was a big support. However, there was not enough money coming together, and then it was the Director General, it was me, saying it makes no sense to start a program if we don't have the full commitment, which is above some threshold. But the ministers told me immediately after the meeting, don't stop your work on that. Try to realize it. I look to Franco with one eye all the time. And therefore, we discussed it with the member states again. And it was my opinion that under the title of responsibility, the space safety should be considered. And this was one of the elements of space safety. And therefore, we put it again on the table. Of course, we discussed again with different member states. And we were lucky enough to get the support that we can now do it.
Thank you. Next question. Yes, please, Jeff.
Hola, soy Alba.
Hi, my name is Alba. I come from Informativos Telecinco. I'd like to ask Mr. Duque if the effects of pollution can be seen from space. And since Christmas is coming around, and now with all the Christmas lighting, is that something as well? The increase in lighting, can that be seen from space?
A little bit of a technical question. Bueno, pues tenemos después.
We can talk about this a little bit later, and press conference we'll be having just for Spanish journalists, but of course a great amount of pollution, or dealing with pollution, measuring it is what the goal of the Copernicus satellites is. And one thing we're going to be doing very quickly is developing a satellite that can measure greenhouse gas effect. There are applications that already exist that can let you see how much pollution there is in each individual spot of the Earth thanks to European satellites. And in terms of light pollution, or lights can be seen at night by astronauts, of course, but what's most important is for the children here on Earth to be able to see the stars. So the two things have to go together. Light can be great at Christmas time, but we have to limit it as much as possible. Make sure that we send as little light to space as possible so that the children can continue to see the stars.
Just to remind, we do have the translation interpretation in the cabin for everyone, including in the room. So I remind you, please say your name and your media. We have more than 1,100 people online following this press conference. Thank you. So, next question.
Jeff Faustus, Space News. For the Director General, you mentioned you were very happy. Were there any programs that you had to modify or were unable to get subscribed when all was said and done?
When we started the action of subscription this morning at, what was it, 9:35 or something like that, 5 minutes a little bit late than we started. When we started the subscription, there was no program to be eliminated or whatever. Of course, in the time before, we were testing also the ground by discussing with member states, and this is sometimes, if you see that there is a program which does not have the full support, then it makes no sense. But when we started the subscription, or the co-chairs were friendly enough to start the subscription page by page. I don't know how many pages, 60 pages or something like that?
48. 47.
47 pages, they know. So there was not a single program which we had to stop. As last time, as I had to say, we don't have enough, so we are below a threshold where we cannot work on. We try to realize this, as I said. So when you get the information later on, you will see that there is not a single program where it is said we don't do it.
Thank you. So we have Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan Amos, BBC News. One of the outstanding successes here, obviously, is Copernicus. If I could address my question to Joseph, how big was the oversubscription? You were asking for 1.4, I think. You got substantially more than that. What do you do with it? I mean, not just substantially more, an enormous amount more. It's extraordinary.
So, question is directed to the Director of Earth Observation, Joseph Aschbacher.
So, thank you. Amos, what do you do with the money? First of all, we are very happy to have realized a very strong subscription. But let me, before I go into details, what it means. Yes, we got 1.807 billion subscription. That is 400 million, roughly more than was originally proposed, which corresponds to a 29% oversubscription. So that is a very strong signal. It's, I think, a signal for ESA member states to Europe that, first of all, ESA is a very strong partner to the European Commission. As you know, the Copernicus program is led by the European Commission globally, and ESA is implementing the space component. So I think this is really a very strong message of our member states that ESA is the right partner for activities with the European Union, and I think this is a very important message, especially in the context of the EU-ESA relationship, which is always being discussed. But I think the other element is really the topics which are being addressed, which are exactly the ones that are on everyone's mind. Today, the European Parliament has declared an emergency, a climate emergency, which, as you know, will mean that Europe aims at a reduction of carbon of 55% by the year 2030 compared to the level of 1990, meaning that climate is a top priority, and Copernicus is addressing the climate question to a large extent. So I think Europe collectively, through our member states today at Space 19 Plus, has taken its responsibility to put action to the political words which they have declared and which are being decided. Not to mention all the elections where the climate topic has been a major issue for many elections in many countries recently. So now to your question, what do we do with the money? We have a very concrete step or elements of list of what is being carried out or how this money is being used. Let me mention a few, and I'm not saying which one costs how much, because there is obviously a variation depending on the industrial proposals which are being prepared right now. But as I mentioned, CO2 is a priority for Europe. The requirements which have been given to us by the user community, obviously federated by the European Commission, are demanding a much more powerful, a much more performing or better performing satellite or satellites to measure CO2. Just to mention a few examples, we have been asked to reduce the resolution. That means to improve the resolution to about 2 by 2 kilometers square for measuring CO2. The swath width, which is the width of the satellite stripe, is increased by about 50% compared to original planning. Also, we have been asked to make sure that we are well distinguishing anthropogenic from natural emissions of CO2, and therefore we need 3 more instruments on board to do that. Auxiliary instruments, we call them. They're called MAP, NO2, and the Cloud Imager. And all of this adds up, of course, also in terms of money. It's more expensive than compared to the original, I would say, configuration. Another example is the hyperspectral mission. We call it CHIME. That mission was originally planned to be an instrument on board the next generation of Sentinel-2. As you might remember, this satellite is flying only in the early 30s. However, the users consider this a very important instrument for many applications, including food security, Africa, migration, and topics that are related to it, and therefore want to have it as a free flyer. That means you need your own platform, a launcher, the integration, and all the elements connected to it, and therefore obviously that costs extra money, and this will be used to do that. Plus there's also the question of a European source versus non-European sources. There's one particular element which is a large deployable antenna, which could eventually be provided in Europe if we have sufficient money, and this is certainly an option today, which is I think a very interesting one. So there are various elements. I think in short what we are doing is a more robust and a more performant system, which we are offering to the European Commission as our contribution from ESA.
Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. And of course, Mr. Aschbacher, as the other directors, are available for a more in-depth questions. For the sake of the timing, I would like to limit a little bit the answers and pass the opportunity over there, please.
Hello, my name is Mercedes Benitez, and I come from the ABC Seville. Just a very simple question. Of those 14.4 billion, how much will be used for missions to the moon? If you could tell me that specifically so that we can have a headline.
Mission to the moon. Yeah.
It was what I understood. So, meanwhile, I understand moon in any language because that's. Dave Parker, please give the answer.
Thank you very much, David Parker, Director of Exploration. I'm totting up the numbers in my head. We have a program of about 300 million associated with the Lunar Gateway activities and about another 150 of lunar robotic activities. But then you have to add that to that the cost of our contributions to the European service modules that will take humans to the moon in cooperation with NASA on the Orion program. So very roughly a quarter of the exploration activities associated with the moon out of the 1953 million euros that we gathered. So about a quarter of that.
Thank you. Next question, please. Yes.
Hola.
My name is Mabel Angulo, and from Canal Sur Television. I have 3 questions. The first of all, how will the money be distributed amongst the industries of the different European countries? My second question, there's a challenge for the next 2020 ExoMars, and it seems that there are problems with the parachute. Will we have that challenge of being able to put a rover on Mars, or will some money from the 14.4 billion have to be used for that? And last, you talked about independence for Europe, but of course there are other nations such as China which are on the rise more and more. So will there be any chance for agreements with them such as exist with NASA, or will there be a chance for agreements with India or with other countries?
I hope your Spanish is good.
It's again Dave.
Regarding ExoMars, the programme funding request included the funding required to finish and launch ExoMars 2020. The 2016 orbiter is operating, producing fantastic science. So we secured that funding to finish ExoMars. And as far as the parachute testing is going, yes, we've started the first phase of the ground tests of the parachutes with support of our friends at NASA JPL, actually on Monday. Just
concerning the industrial thing, that's ESA. ESA has what we call G-return rule, but at the same time we have competition. That means the different contribution of the different member states in percentage is also the basis for the contracts given to industry of the different countries. But, and there is a but, we do competition first. And then we look into, so that really the money which comes from the member states is really taken into account in the G-return, but in a competitive way. So just, so this means we are not pre-selecting industry here and there, but first we look to what has to be done, then we look into competition, and then we make sure that the G-return coefficient, as we call it, and I'm sure Eric could talk about hours about that one. No, half an hour. Then has to be 1. That's the target, so that the member states, what they give, they get what they give.
Thank you. Jonathan? Oh, here first, yes.
Yeah, Alexander Stern, freelance science writer for Mr. Werner. Regarding space safety, you wanted 900 million euros for safety security program, the applications. You got, if I got it right, 541 million euros. What is possible with this money? What cuts have to be made?
It's right. That's a space safety program consisting of 2 parts. Safety in space, safety and security in space, and safety and security applications. The overall amount which we targeted was 900 million. We did not get that overall amount, but it's not that now we are close to suicide, because we can do what we wanted to do, but some of the actions have to be a little bit delayed. So it's not stopping the programs, not stopping the activities. For instance, the L5 mission, the Lagrange mission for the space weather, our intention was to go full speed. We did not get the full support for that right now, so we are starting with developing the instruments, etc. But for instance, Adrios, the mission which is for space debris removal and space debris avoidance, that was fully financed with a number we said we need. So this will go with full speed. And also HERA, which was mentioned earlier already, got the full support. And then we have the core activities and CREAM. Core activities are activities overall, and CREAM is for collision avoidance systems. And there this is scalable, so our idea was higher. Yes, you're right. We intended to get more, but this is live. Now we have a little bit less, so we have to have a new plan how to do it, in what time span. And in addition, we have in the different programs in telecommunication and in Earth observation, we have security applications. So, but it's not a disaster, not at all. One has to have some idea first, and then adapt the ideas to the incoming subscriptions. And this is what we have to do now. I'm not unhappy because of that. I cannot say that. We started with a totally new pillar. You have to see this one. This was, some people were saying this is wrong. You should not do it. You should do it just in the programs. You should hide it under some other activities. And we said no. We put it as a narrative. We are looking for safety and security. And there's also, I look to Eric. You're right that you look to me, because the cyber resilience is also part of the story, which is not in this number, which is in the basic activities and GSDP. So we have a safety and security pillar right now. This is a positive message, and well supported by the member states. Well supported means not 100%, yes.
Thank you. Peter, please.
Peter, the Southern Space Intel Report. A couple of quick questions. First for Magali Vessière. as you have the opposite problem from Joseph Eschbacher, maybe. So he has plus 29%, and back of the envelope says you have maybe minus 13. I know you said you have a lot of flexibility of moving budget buckets around among the programs you have. So could you give us just a general statement of how 13% less than what you requested for Skylight, whatever it is, on the optical side, you can maneuver within that so nothing is going to be eliminated, but I'll let you say about that. And the second question is a more policy question. There are a couple of programs that were approved here where one nation is 80+% of the total. And you have to wonder why that is an ESA program, since ESA takes 15 to 20% off the top of these things as a cost. Space Rider is the first example. I think there are one or two more in the budget. Is that a European program if, in this case, Italy takes 80-something% of Space Rider? Is that a European program just because it's under the roof of ESA? So maybe first from Agali on how you're going to manage the budget decrease.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. So before answering your question in terms of undersubscription, I would like to share with you that I'm extremely pleased that we have had, in fact, an increase of more than 30% of the overall subscriptions compared with last time. So it's a big success, and I would like to underline this. Second, in terms of undersubscriptions, as you rightly said, indeed we have this flexibility that will allow us, in any case, to allow the member states to allocate let's say, their subscriptions to different programmatic lines during the period of implementation of the whole program. It's true that we have proposed to them a completely new framework, programmatic framework, made of three, let's say, more traditional generic lines and three very different lines, which we called strategic programmatic lines. And indeed, they prefer to, for some of them, to start with, let's say, a larger subscriptions to the generic lines that they were more acquainted with. But over time, they will, and whenever the projects will mature and the activities will be ready for implementation, I'm convinced that they will transfer the money to the strategic programmatic line. So for the final question on optical communication, yes, indeed, it's part of the three strategic programmatic lines. We have already a very substantial subscription, which allows us to proceed with no problem at all, at least for the first year, maybe even more. And in parallel, we will develop with our member states let's say, what would be the best tools for them to use to implement the rest. So I'm quite pleased we can proceed as planned.
Concerning the question whether Space Rider is just a national program, I would look into it in a different perspective. Take the whole space transportation program, all of it, and then look to it. And then you see there is strong participation of France, strong participation of Italy, strong participation of Germany, strong participation of Belgium and others overall. Now, if you look into the details, then you see, of course, each and every member state has its specific competence. And this is good. It's better than if everything is distributed to all member states. And therefore, Space Rider, yes, I can tell you that at the beginning I tried also to have some more member states being part of it. But what is more important for me, Space Rider will fly and land. And this is for me the message. And it's not a national program. It's a program of the European Space Agency within the whole space transportation package. And I'm sure that Daniel Neuenschwander, the Director for Space Transportation, will support me, hopefully.
Of course, by giving some figures. So overall, in space transportation, Italy participates with 19%. Overall, and on Space Rider, it's closer to 75% the leadership, and we recall that we have 10 participating states, just to underline DG's comment.
From a policy point of view, I would like to comment because this question by Peter is a very good question. But my answer is the following. We have discussed those issues around the table. But in a meeting like this one, in our decisions, we cannot have useful thinking. We have a convention, and this is possible within this convention. And so this makes part of this very unique collective effort we have been done, which allows some programs to be concentrated in some member states. So we follow the convention, and I believe this is a very good convention.
Okay, we're wrapping up very soon, so we can take these two questions more, maybe three max, so please.
Une question pour
I have a question for Minister Frédéric Vidal. I am Juan Bonson from Flash Magazine. You referred to the Franco-German initiative to the moon when you were talking about programs. Now, is that an orbital scientific mission? Is it robotic exploration with a lander and a rover, and a program that would be open to ESA member states, or perhaps to the US, Canada, Japan? Could you say a bit more about that? And have you any idea about the launch date? Could you give us a bit more detail, please?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for the question. What I can say by way of an answer is that it's a program that, for the moment, is about robotic exploration with a rover on the Moon. It was something that we were hoping to do along with our German friends. We wanted to have a program that could be put in ESA's hands to go to the moon. And picking up on the previous question, I think it's very important to understand that even if there are programs that are led by a country or co-led by a number of ESA member states, once it's placed in ESA's hand, it becomes a European program, or one that involves all member states. I think that is what makes for a strong European Space Agency. Even if there are countries that lead and come forward with the ideas, they then have to be endorsed by all the 22 member states.
You allow me one addition, because you have heard about Moon Village. This is exactly what I thought always, that there is different activities from member states, from private institutions, but that they are not isolated, but they are looking to the same destination, looking also to bring additional value. So therefore, for me, it's a very good example of this Moon Village concept. That's good. And this is not only, so in this case, it's France and Germany, but we have also activities, as you know, in Israel, in Japan, and in different countries. So this fits together in this idea. So therefore, I'm really happy also about that this idea, which is now some 5 years old or so, something like that, Dave, that this comes now to really concrete actions.
Thank you. I will take the last question. Is Juliette, AFP?
With a microphone, please.
Juliette Collen de
Yeah, Juliette Collen from AFP. Mr. Vidal, you talked about Thomas Pesquet, French astronaut going into space. Could you give us a bit more detail about that? Well, you know, this is something that had been announced earlier, because the target was to have a reflight for Thomas on ISS, and obviously this is subject to negotiations with all the partner countries, and more specifically with NASA. It's just that the exploration program has now got some supplementary funding, which means that there's this possibility not just for Thomas Pesquet to go back to ISS, which would probably be 2021, if memory serves, but perhaps there's more information we could provide you about that. It's also about having the opportunity for being involved in, I think it was a 30-day mission for our astronaut. So that's what the exploration program was about. And we had to ensure there was necessary funding so that we could reaffirm our ISS presence.
Let me give the floor to Dave Parker, the director of the...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I can confirm everything the Minister has said. The DG has previously proposed, and it's been agreed, that Thomas Pesquet will make a second mission to the International Space Station. And as a result of the support provided by the Member States, the Director General will now make a proposal to the international partners for a mission where there is an overlap between Thomas Pesquet and the opportunity to fly Matthias Maurer.
Thank you. So we have Joss as the last question.
From Politico again. Just to go back to what we were talking about before, the Copernicus project has obviously been very, very successful in terms of member state commitments. I wonder how much of that is driven by the political awareness around climate change now. Do you think that countries would have dealt in so heavily on a technical level if it weren't for these problems we now have?
So, for sure, it is also driven by more awareness about our planet. This is what Earth observation is doing. It's looking to our planet. It's not only Earth observation, it's also looking to catastrophes, of disasters, of natural hazards, etc. So this is one thing. The other one is, of course, Copernicus is now the world-leading Earth observation program. And this is to be part of this world-leading Earth observation program is, of course, good. And then it has, of course, also some industrial consequences, which is also beloved by the member states. And therefore, I think this whole picture of Earth observation with the future EU, with the question of, with the Copernicus program, and then all these Earthwatch elements which we have, including Arctic, which I mentioned earlier. This shows we got the support for all of these programs, more or less. Less means in some cases not 100%. This shows that there is an awareness for our planet, and I think this is good if because the taxpayers, the citizens, not only the Friday citizens, the citizens are asking to do something, and you can only do something if you have the right information. And therefore climate is for sure also a strong driver for these decisions, but maybe politicians know better what is the driver for the Earth observation. But I believe, from my point of view, of course the climate change is a strong driver, but Joseph, you may know what the motivations are.
But maybe we give the floor to Pedro.
Well, indeed, there's a very heightened awareness of the problems of climate change, and indeed, Europe is leading. I think, arguably, Europe is the leader in dealing with these problems. As you probably know, just 4 weeks ago, we took the challenge in Spain to organize the Conference of the Parts, which starts next Monday. And we did it in awareness that the responsibility of Europe of keeping the lead on this led us to make this effort. And then for that reason, as we just said, we have the most advanced set of Earth observation satellites flying and dealing with this problem, and therefore everybody in every industry wants to be in the development of the topmost technology, and this is probably one of the reasons why everybody wants to be in Earth observation, because this is a place where European companies can get ahead of anyone else in the world.
Thank you. To complement AFP questions, maybe Director General wants to add something.
I forgot one point I have to mention. So Dave mentioned that we are looking for Thomas Pesquet and having, if possible, an overlap with Matthias Maurer. But at the same time, it's very clear, and I say it I said it repeatedly, and I say it right now. From the 2009 class of astronauts, we are ready and eager to give all of them 2 flights. This is an important message. These are 6 astronauts, plus we have the one who was nominated later on, Matthias Mauro, which was already mentioned. That also, for instance, the Italian astronaut, we discussed with Italy also about that, about possibility, and we believe that we can fly all of them in the very near future. So I look to Samantha so to have you in space again, not because we would like to have distance to you, but we want to see you working in space again very soon.
Thank you. So there's a couple of things to still do. There's a little tradition here, which we'd like to invite Minister Pedro Duque to hand over the so-called bell to the new co-chairs for the next ministerial. And I take this opportunity also to thank you and the other participants for answering all these questions, and thank you to pass the floor.
Yeah, there's a tradition of handing over a bell for the period of organizing conferences. We have made crystal bells in the Royal Crystal Manufacturing in near Madrid in Spain, near Segovia, a very old factory from the 1700s, and that's what we'll hand over now.
So for those who are following us on the web stream, this is an important moment where we actually pass the bell to the other country who is going to host. So thank you very much to all for your participation, and this ends the program of the web stream. Thank you for attending.